Mila, you're muted.
I just had a beautiful speech. Thank you. Hey, good afternoon. And that is not a sign of how this meeting is going to go, I hope. Here we are live meeting as a subgroup of the IBS negotiations team. Our group is charged with drafting some language to bring back to the IBS team in the area of 4 memoranda of agreement. We have agreed that these 4 areas should be incorporated into a master agreement language because they've been in place for many years. They're more or less a permanent part of our agreement and should not exist in the MOA space, which is a more temporary space. So we're going to work on that this afternoon. And since writing is a task that is hard to do as a group, Dave and I have brought forward some draft language, which we think makes it a little easier to react to a proposal rather than draft from scratch. So any comments, any questions, any additions to our scope of work for today? Okay. So if you're in, and it looks like you all are into our shared document called MOA buckets. If you scroll down onto the second page, you will find some copy and pasting. And the first one is Article XX, shared decision making. Do you see that? What Dave did was take MOA and just copy paste it. And we sort of started to separate and format, and I got in there and made some tweaks to language that just were more of not any kind of qualitative tweaking of what it's saying, but introductory paragraphs that explain why something exists, but don't actually contain any language that directs, that somebody would be able to enforce or grieve if it were violated. So edits like that, edits for clarity, I guess would be the way I'd describe the tweaks that we've done so far. So that's what we've got, is just what existed in the MOA, translated over into potential contract language. And so I think I would propose that we just go through these one at a time, see what you think. We're going to take this back to the whole IBS team as a recommendation. So it's not a final product here today, and it's just going to represent our best thinking. Dave, any other thoughts about our process for today?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. The only thing I was just going to highlight was the 4 MOAs that we talked about at IBS to roll into the contract was the educator effectiveness apex language, the shared decision-making, induction, and assessment day. And so all of, the language and the placement that is kind of in there is very much draft, just our preliminary best thinking, but would definitely be open to people saying that's not a great placement, or I think this other place would be a better place to store that language in the master agreement. So like I said, it's just our best guess on what might be a good place when it was just 2 heads, but multiple heads are always better than 1 or 2.
And I think I'd like to start easy and go bigger. So I'd like to suggest that we go to the bottom of the document, to the shortest one. and let's just get some early wins if we can, and get a rhythm going. How about that? So at the bottom, you see the assessment day language.
So, sorry, Mila.
You want to talk, Dave? Yeah, talk about why you put it there and what we're thinking.
Yep. So it's Article 27 is what I like to call the catch-all. It's all the non-teaching duty pieces. It has everything to do with sidewalk duty or crosswalk duty and after school duty and all the other things that aren't normal teaching class kinds of places in the article. 20.20 would just place it at the very end of that article. So no special thinking behind that except just at the bottom. of that article. And really all that is directly a copy paste from the current MOA language that's writing in there. The only potential cut that I might make to this would be maybe taking off the beginning language. You know, sometimes we use that language, sometimes we didn't, but it is not necessary language for the contract. So like I said, it's just a copy paste from the MOA. It's a relatively short one. The only, like I said, we could cut those words that I've highlighted, and it would still have the same meaning and weight. Thoughts or questions or comments?
I think it's fine. It reads a little weird, but I'm not that nitpicky. I don't know, just like without that additional assessment day mid-year, it just sounds weird to end that way, but that's my only thing. I think it looks good.
Would it make more sense to cut it actually from
Yes.
mid-year over, what I've highlighted now?
Yeah, because like if they wanted to, they could add it not mid-year, right? So.
Yeah, it's the calendar committee who sets it. So us saying mid-year doesn't really.
Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. I would agree. Other thoughts? Anybody else have any input?
Especially Kristen, you're our elementary person. This impacts you the most.
My only input would be, I think, and I'm not suggesting that the language go in here, but it does have to be mid-year based on the assessments that we're mandated to give. And those always fall in January.
Well,
So maybe
we use it as an adjective and say one additional mid-year assessment day.
Yep.
That sounds good.
And do we need anything in there about per school year or annual?
No, all language applies per school year because it's the contract for an individual school year. I suppose if we had multi-year contracts, you know, then maybe, but all of our language is within one school year. I mean, I suppose we could put the language, the agrees that one mid-year assessment per school year at the very end, but I think I personally believe that would be unnecessary additional language.
Okay, it looks perfect.
All right. Sounds good. Which one do you want to do next, Mila?
Let's just roll up from the bottom.
Okay. So, so this would be a insertion for the Educator Effectiveness Committee. So Article 14 is the article that deals with evaluations in the contract. So this would place it kind of in the middle parts of that article. I don't know if you have your contracts with you, but this would put this, you know, in the middle of, there we go. Just right at the end of that article. It says 14.16, just because above you is the induction language, which I also was recommending to go into Article 14. So that would be 15 and then 16 just at the end of the contract language. Once again, the placement of it is just recommendation, but it made sense to me that since we're talking about Apex does evaluation, placing it in the evaluation article made the most sense. I could see, you know, potentially putting it earlier in the article, but order doesn't really have a bearing on its importance or significance. You know, some people say you should put things in a timeliney kind of space, another kind of place. I don't think that hard about these kind of things, to be honest with you. So why don't you guys take a second? Oh, go ahead.
14.16.2, do we want to turn that will into shall to that?
14.16.2. Let's see here. Sorry, what did you say? Which one? 14.16.2. Yeah, we can do that. I can do that right now.
Do you see it? Okay,
Yep, I got it.
thank you.
One of those odd ones because the Apex committee is actually also in state law that says we need to have this committee. So it's like, we will have it no matter what happens, because that's what the law says we're going to do.
I'm wondering about the shall meet multiple times per year. The legal requirement is that we have a committee, which implies there's a meeting. But
It's at least two by state law, by state statute, because we have to have one to approve the new stuff at the end of next year. Like, so at the end of this coming school year, we approve next year's stuff. And this year we evaluate the effectiveness of last year's evaluation. So by state statute, we have to meet at least twice a school year to adopt the new one and to review last year's. So
yeah, I couldn't remember the language. So, okay.
I'm looking at that contract and the last thing is 14.14.
yeah, like I said, I put the induction one as 15.
Oh,
so that's why this would
14.
be 15
Okay.
and then 16.
Yes, I see it now. I'm with you.
Yep.
Okay.
Might be helpful to flip back and forth between, and it looks like some of you are, the current language and what's here. I see a couple of you guys looking at the agreement doing that, but the biggest language change I made was in 1416.4, which is, we used to put the in the MOA, we actually have the website address, which is fine when we're updating it every year. So we have the opportunity to go in and change it if it ever changes. Instead, this just would put it on the, just say published on the district website instead of a specific web page itself.
You mentioned that it's at least twice. So I don't know if multiple is too vague.
I mean, our committee meets about every 2 months. And so in reality, we meet about 2 months, because we also do an additional meeting to train the team that's going to participate in the any appeals that happen because of our the appeals language in the process. So we have to train them. So we do meet more than twice a year, but I don't know if we need to say 3 times, 4 times. I think that would be, just personally, just more than necessary.
I don't want to dictate it. It needs change. But I do, I take Ian's point, sort of like, well, let's say what the law says, but then I wonder if we shouldn't just say the committee shall meet as is required by statute, or at a minimum.
Yeah, and then I would want to put, if we were going to do it that way, like no less than the required number, instead of like that it shall meet only those 2 times, because I could see somebody saying, well, hey, it only says we have to meet twice.
Yeah.
So we're only going to meet twice now. So yeah, I mean, if we phrase it that way, I wouldn't have any heartburn about that.
I like that, just because then it gives us a base standard.
So maybe something like at a.
What about like at a minimum of twice a year?
not that it changes, but statutes do change. And kind of the intention of the language of putting it into the article versus MOA is to not have to go back and edit things every time the legislator meets. Not that they will, right? But every now and again, I know Mila and I've had to do this before. Like we run across something, and we're like, oh, whoops, that's not in compliance anymore with new statutes. Because if we don't look at it every year, we're not fine tooth combing every single thing, every single session after every law gets passed. And so sometimes things slip through the cracks. So, as long as if we put it as required by statute, then if it becomes 2, 3, 4, whatever times, then we're good, we're covered. And if it's not required, we're still saying they're meeting multiple times. So it's not like we're I don't know.
I'm playing with this phrasing and it's feeling a little awkward. If you're watching, you're seeing me messing around with it. The committee shall meet at least as often as required by state statutes. How does that feel? Allison, do you have any wordsmithing?
Like shall meet at minimum. The minimum number. No, never mind.
Yeah, I know. I had the word minimum in there originally, but I was struggling.
So I wonder if it's more like the Educator Effectiveness Committee continues its work throughout each school year, meeting periodically, and then like a parens or a comma, and it's like at least at least the minimum number as required by statute.
Yeah.
To merge the two sentences together may make it easier.
Parenthetically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, here's the big question. Inside or outside the punctuation?
Outside, sister.
Outside.
Inside. Yeah.
Outside.
You want to put it outside, huh?
Outside. Yeah. What?
The period goes outside.
Yeah, period goes outside.
Oh. Not the ellipsis. Okay. All right. Or the parenthesis.
Let me pull out my Chicago, University of Chicago writing guide or something.
Cindy Duma will correct all of this for us.
Grad school has ingrained that into me, I feel, for life, because I had one professor who would just like tear everything to shreds if you didn't do it correctly. I almost cried one time. I remember.
Okay.
How about anything else on that one?
I may be picky, but I don't think we need costs in these two because we do have the cost shall be paid.
Yeah, substitutes for certified and
Facilitation of the committee.
yeah, so just facilitation. And delete cost there. Okay. I mean, I'm team Oxford, comma. Can we put a comma right here?
I am too. I'm with you. I like the Oxford comma. Okay, that's 3 of us. We're there.
Okay. I think everything else looks pretty good. So I'm seeing the word regularly down in point 4, and I'm seeing that we use the word periodically in point 2. Should we just use regularly in point 2?
I like regularly better.
Yeah, me too. Because periodically is kind of like, yeah, every now and then.
We might meet, we might not. I don't know.
Right.
Okay.
I note that I'm using the word statute a little bit interchangeably, and I see the word law used in a couple of other places. And a quick search shows me that the word law appears a lot, and the word statute doesn't appear as much. I think technically speaking, we are talking, I mean, in our usage, they're somewhat interchangeable, but do you have a thought about that, Dave? Which one do you feel like is the term to use?
I think we use law more often because we just tend
Hey
to
Dave,
use
can you hear me?
tend to use the word law more often than others. So
Yeah. So I'll replace that with law, but okay. We good to go? Is that one good?
Mhm.
Okay. Rolling up to 14.15.
Holy moly, that was
Favorite.
long.
They're getting a little longer now.
Okay.
Why don't we just take a couple of quiet minutes to read? Would that be good? Because this is longer.
So I see a couple of you guys have noticed some of the inconsistencies of language being older than anyone's actually looked at it. For example, we don't do master teacher licensees anymore. So that should be professional teaching teacher license. And it should be professional educator license because there's more than just the teachers category. So we should probably change both of those terms in 1415.9 to professional educator license. I'll go ahead and do that now. And then thanks for Allison.
Sorry, I'm in suggesting mode.
It's all good. It's all good. So yeah, so we would just change that phrase. We can actually just cut that whole last sentence because we already have the law savings clause. It says if the law change, we're required to negotiate it. So we can actually just cut that last sentence altogether. And I'll just go ahead and actually, yeah, there we go. And then in 1415.8, I did double check that is accurate. That is the number of credits necessary to get the professional license, I think. Is that not right, Mila?
Could I suggest that in keeping with the way we do things in other parts of the agreement, that we just say, go to the CDE website and do what they require? Because then I don't want to have to change this. So.
Yep. No, I agree.
Okay.
I did just double check just to make sure it was accurate at the very least.
I think it probably is right now, but it's subject to change, and I don't want to list it here if it changes.
So would you put in something that says
let me mess with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see.
And then just going up, there are other comments up at the top. I'll let Mila finish up what she's doing there.
I want to just pause for 1 second while we're on the subject of professional licenses.
Yeah.
So on 1415.9, when we say they won't be required to obtain a professional license for any reason, actually they will be. The initial can only be renewed, I think, twice. Currently, once, maybe twice. I can't remember. That may have changed. And there is a point at which an educator cannot continue to have a license. They can't stay in the initial space forever. And so I wonder if we should just strike 0.9. What's the value of keeping it? What were we trying to avoid?
Having not spent, obviously we have not really done any work in this MOA in a very long time. So, some of the back history I might be missing, on it. However, I think the intention feels to me to be to say like, hey, get the professional license, don't get the professional license. That's on you. Right? Like we can't require you to do it. We require you to have a valid license. But if you make a choice to not submit your paperwork, that's on you. Is that, I think, is the kind of the intention of that section. That's there.
Do we need that in contract language? Like, because if you don't have a license, then
you don't have a license, you can't teach.
Educator. And so yeah, we can't require you to do it, but the state of Colorado can. So
And I think that's my point, is like, why do we need to say that? The state's licensure rules are going to govern this.
I do agree that it doesn't seem like it's necessary since we don't have any salary schedule advancement that's tied to professional licensure. I don't know, at some point we did maybe, or at one point, I don't know. Because that's just, like I said, we've touched this so infrequently I remember there was like at one point we made some minor tweaks for language, like things changed titles. That was the last time we changed anything in this MOA in general. So yeah, I'd be fine with just cutting it, since
Yeah,
it's not our rules, it's the state's rules.
exactly. So, and then if I just direct your attention to point 8, I just added, it already said the teacher has the responsibility of submitting all forms, fees. I inserted required coursework and other paperwork to the Colorado Department of Education for a professional license. So the point I think we're making is it's not the district that does that, it's the educator. And whatever those forms, fees, and paperwork are, you're going to work that out with CDE. Is that okay?
Should we just
Yep.
add in the required, submitting all required forms, fees? Oh, can we change required to before all of that? Instead of required coursework, just put required forms, fees, coursework, and other paperwork.
Okay. Okay.
I just see the similar language there between that 0.8 and 0.5. I see that the 0.5 is specific to completion of the induction program, not necessarily the professional license. So those are two different processes, correct?
Actually, that's the same.
Okay,
Yeah.
upon completion, you could apply for the professional.
Yeah. We could just add upon completion. Oh, I think those two just need to be merged.
And should we change here? Like you said, the teacher, should we make it the educator? Like, yeah.
Yep. Should say the educator, not the teacher. Yep. And then I would say that we just add to the beginning of, and don't worry about renumbering them now. We can renumber things later. But I would say we'd put upon completion of the induction program, the educator has the responsibility of submitting the paperwork, and then striking all of 15.5.
Gotcha. And I'm leaving at 0.8 because I feel like it's a concluding action.
Yeah.
Take it out of the middle of the list and.
Yep. So I'm gonna just strike that now. And like I said, we'll renumber them later.
Okay.
In case we have, no sense messing with that now if we make other changes.
Okay.
And Cindy always catches those things. It's like, Dave, why did you jump from 11 to 15? I don't know, because it auto-corrected. I don't know.
That's your favorite excuse.
It is my favorite excuse.
Okay.
She actually probably did. She probably wouldn't even ask me the question. She would just fix it.
So Allison, you're recommending actually, it looks like you just rescinded that.
It's weird.
Nurturer is a weird term to mandate in a master agreement.
So the primary role of mentor are teacher, coach, advocate, guide. Yeah, like I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm good with striking the word nurturer and moving and after guide. I don't have any heartburn over that.
Me too.
So
Allison, will you do that? Or Dave is doing it?
I got it.
So now we need definitions of coach, advocate, and guide.
Hard pass.
Again,
Hard pass.
so none of it doesn't make sense. Like, are to teach, coach, and advocate for, and guide the inductee? Like, the sentence doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you're right.
Let's see here. The primary role of a mentor should be something like are to teach, coach. Yeah, that's better, Allison.
So the other thing that I'm noticing with that statement, though, is we've called the hired educator, inductee, and teacher throughout this. And it gets a little confusing here because now we're calling their mentor a teacher. I just feel like it should be aligned.
Agreed.
Well, now we're not calling them one. We're just saying it's their job to teach them.
So
Yeah.
I don't like using the word, calling them an inductee. That doesn't make sense. It's an educator in the induction program is what I would say is the correct terminology. So we can go through and change that. It would be my recommendation, but if others think it would be better to do it differently, that's fine. But we don't have inductees. It almost sounds like we're like, this is on YouTube, but we're like inducting people into like some sort of like fraternity or something like that. There's going to be like robes and secret chants or something like that.
Teachers are their own like special society, not necessarily a secret one, but
I like educator.
yeah.
Okay. So in 14, 15, 7, instead of inductee, use the word educator.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the next sentence, the mentor shall be trained by the district and be from the same location. And because we said mentor twice.
Okay. Makes sense.
Does that make sense? The mentor shall be district trained and be from the same, or should we change it to trained by the district? That's nitpicky, but.
I think it makes sense to the way you have it. The mentor shall be district trained and be from the same location when possible, and shall closely match the educator in terms of assignment when possible. And probably, yeah, when possible. If we're doing a shall, we have to use a when possible, and we have to use will, because shall means that it has to happen, and will means that we're going to try super hard to have it. I think this is another one of those Mila sections of the articles that has been like only slightly adjusted, and people didn't do a good job of like combing through to make sure it's all good.
Yeah, we find that all over the place. It's like add-ons to a house. It just turns into a higgledy-piggledy ramshackle something.
A lot of these things were written at like 4 a.m. too, back when they did professional positional bargaining.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
since this is the induction program and we're calling the other people mentors, do we need to, so like where it says no more than 2 inductees, if we change that to educators, is it fine to just say educators, or no more than 2 educators currently enrolled in the inductee program or the induction program? Or is it implied?
Mentors shall, maybe more it's like mentors shall, let's see.
Well, they're also
Yeah.
sometimes called mentees. I don't know if that would apply just to that statement.
I just like, there's a differentiation to me,
Right.
because like the mentor is an educator. So if we don't like the inductees, then like I don't know.
I know we've just been changing everything to in educator, but I think inside of this article where we're talking about induction, I think it could be okay to use the terms mentor and inductee. They're both educators, and without having all these phrases, educator who is a mentor, educator who is an induction participant. That's a lot of words. I think inside of this paragraph, maybe we could just use mentor, inductee.
I think in the mentor paragraph, it makes sense to use mentor and mentee. I don't like necessarily inductee is not my favorite, but mentor and mentee makes the most sense. Makes sense to me.
Okay. Works for me.
Well, that's a good point.
Okay, so I just changed those to mentee. Is that? Oh.
There you go. Yeah. These are probably really super exciting watches on YouTube, just saying.
I can't
I have
imagine.
to tell you, at parent-teacher conferences, I had 2 parents be like, "I've seen you in those meetings." I was like, okay.
I got stopped in a mall once, and this is pre-COVID, obviously, and they're like, "Hey, I recognize you."
Yeah, I was like, this is so awkward now. And they like wanted to talk about it. They're in another union. They're like, I just like to watch whenever I can, go work. I was like, you want to talk about your kid?
Okay.
People wonder why I wear baseball hats the entire time I'm out, not at work.
All right.
We go. Have point 3 is okay. No, we haven't talked about.
We didn't do 14, 15, 6.
Okay, 6. All right.
So the sub piece of this was, there was a time when the district, I knew this one, the district did require you to have an effective evaluation to complete induction. And that's when that got put into the MOA. That's long, it is a long time ago, but that was why that was put in, to separate the 2 processes, as one, you got induction, and then the other, you got evaluation.
In the Apex, do we refer to it as summative evaluation anymore? Don't we refer to it as like final effectiveness rating or something
Do
like
a
that?
final effectiveness rating. Yep. I would say that final rating instead of final effectiveness rating might make sense, distinguished from final evaluation rating, or final effectiveness rating. Either one is fine.
Or performance evaluation, if we're not going to use the exact term, maybe.
Yeah.
I think summative is outdated, is my point.
Can we just say evaluation?
I think in our context, there really isn't any other use of that word.
Yeah,
I
I'm
guess-
just looking through actually right now. The final effectiveness rating is the specific Apex language, but it's
Yeah.
likely to change eventually.
Someday. That's okay.
What if we just evaluation?
While we're thinking on that though, I guess I just have a question, because it's been now a long time, which is weird to say, how that I haven't done induction in a long time. And I kind of like, the evaluation process has changed a lot since I went through induction, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But like, I don't know how much work the induction process is. The evaluation process is a boatload of work. And so to say that there can be no crossover, to me, is kind of messed up. Like, what
It
are
might
we
be
doing
a little
on teachers?
chopping off your nose.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. And then there's also the statement later on about information obtained through the induction process shall never be used for summative evaluation purposes.
Yeah, I don't like.
I don't know that that's accurate. I don't think that's accurate in the, everything's an observation body of evidence space of evaluations. We can say that all we want, but in reality, it's just not accurate. Nor fair. I think a lot of this, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Dave, I interrupted you.
Oh, I said a lot of this was written back when it was like, all right, in your classroom once a year, congratulations, have a great life.
I wonder, what if we just had the last sentence? Because it's really all about what you said, Dave. Is the intention here is just that we not require a satisfactory evaluation in order to finish our induction program. So what if we just said a satisfactory performance rating or final evaluation rating shall not be a prerequisite for, and I won't say obtaining a professional license because that's up to CDE. I would say for completing the Adams 12 induction program.
That makes more sense to me. And it cleans up a lot of the weirdness in the middle. And so you're thinking like strike from really that whole first sentence down to where it says a satisfactory.
Yes. And I'm going to say district, not all of that. Do we capitalize the district in this usage? The D?
I'm gonna say I don't think so, but Cindy will fix it later, so I'm not too worried about it.
All right. Thank goodness for Cindy. She's not watching. We'll tell her later we shouted out to her. I think we should talk about final evaluation because you could have I mean, we don't give like final ratings at this time in our evaluation system, but I think at any point along the way, I don't know, it just, I wonder if it's
So maybe a satisfactory, yeah, a satisfactory rating in the evaluation.
a satisfactory
Effectiveness.
rating.
Yeah.
How's that?
Fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure when we bring this back to the group, there's gonna be other people who are gonna also have, so.
Yeah. Ready for point 4?
Yeah,
Sure.
I was going to suggest that we don't have to have the intentionality here. The purpose for something is going to be, I believe, more subjective.
Mm-hmm.
So I would recommend taking that last piece out.
yeah, I feel like that fit better when it was an MOA and there was like a
Yeah.
justification. Also,
I
do we need this?
No, we can cut that part.
In
I
fact,
almost
do we
wonder,
even
can
need this?
sorry, I don't even know if we need this whole section, to be honest with you.
That's what I was saying. Yep.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
I thought that's what Ian was suggesting, to take the whole thing out.
Oh, I thought he was just talking about the end, but now I realize there's something highlighted and it's not Ian. I thought it was Ian. Who is
I
that?
just suggested the end there, but I looking at the whole thing, we have this language elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think the whole section.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
You work on your personal goal because you're in the evaluation process. That's what happens. So we don't need to say that first sentence. And you complete the 2-year induction requirements. Yeah, that's what the induction program is all about. And yeah, it's nice to say that they're designed for growth and that they align with the educator effectiveness rubrics, but that's not a contractual, that's more about intention, to Ian's earlier point.
I remember when we added this section, it was it was after SB 191 was introduced, but before we were really doing it. And I remember the conversation was not wanting people to have to do 2 pockets of work as few times as possible. That was, I think, the intention. All poorly done or not poorly done or whatever, but like that was the intention, was to say, hey, induction and evaluation should be hand in hand kind of space and not make people do double work. I think in reality, what we learned is that this section is not necessary for such necessary.
The only part, I guess, is like induction requirements align with educator effectiveness rubrics. But I think we could delete the whole thing. That would be the only thing where it's like, hey, this goes hand in hand with your evaluation.
Well,
The induction, sorry, go ahead.
The state defines what has to be a component of every district's induction program. And so they're the ones who really tell you what you have to do. So it's not like we can stray far off that course anyway.
Well, and the other thing I would say is that those induction requirements are aligned with the state model rubric. They're already synced up because the state put up both and actually did something right. And if you're going to have one, like if you're going to have a standards and say this is what an effective teacher is, you should probably say, hey, new people, figure that out. Here you go.
So it's just redundant because
Mhm.
it's already implied.
Yep.
Okay, let's delete it. I want to delete it.
Okay, go right ahead.
Boom. Well
All right.
done. Well played. Okay, point 3.
Licensed educator shall be provided an induction team that consists of a supervisor. That's their building supervisor, district trained mentor, and a district induction coordinator. A representative of the professional development shall act as a resource to the team.
That's fine. I guess my only thing would be, does that really have to be contractually like mandated at some point down the line? Could the district decide it needs to formulate that team differently? But I guess we could renegotiate it at the time.
Well, I think the only added person in there is an induction coordinator, and someone has to be designated in the district, the induction coordinator, to get our induction program approved by CDE. So someone's got to have that job no matter what happens, whether it's their sole job or just one of many hats they carry. It's still somebody's got to do it. So I don't see anything in there that is not something that would have to happen unless CDE and state law dramatically change. And then we'd have to open up the article anyways. I do think, otherwise I think that's good if we want to move up to 14.2. 15.2. So this is our current practice and what we do, and it's mostly because of the way state law is written out. You can't really jump into induction kind of midstream. And so, yeah, that's.
Can I ask what does happen with those educators in the first year?
They just start the next school year.
Okay, so no, I mean,
they're just delayed to get their initial or converted to professional, but initials, I suppose there could be the situation where somebody's on their, what did Miles say, like third renewal or whatever it is. But even though they say there's only 3, if you're in the middle of an induction, I know people who have gotten waivers from used to have to request a waiver on the extension renewal. And so, we just don't, the program, this was, I'm sure, like I said, this is old language, but I'm sure it was, hey, if somebody starts in November, they're not going to have done all the stuff necessary to get their induction. So and we don't have a way of making it up. So we can't promise them that they're going to be induction if they're hired after this point in the year. So yeah, I think fall can be deleted. That's not a problem. Anyone else have anything else for 15.2? Okay. So in this is actually, we're gonna have to renumber these anyways, because that 2 is actually should be 1. This used to have a longer introduction that was much more flowery. If you look at the MOA, it's like the district and the association believe in blah 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 blah. And when Mila and I were putting this together, she made the suggestion of let's just cut to the chase. We don't need a long introductory paragraph for this section.
So I guess change licenses, what is that? Like, does that mean I currently teach social studies and I want to teach science? I would have to go through induction again?
No, it would be like counseling. Like if you go get a counseling license, when you change a license, sometimes you have to go through some kind of induction to convert to a professional license over again.
Okay, so like, yeah, but like a teaching license is entirely different than a counseling license.
That's right.
So it's
And-
just a new license.
It
You're
is
talking
a
about in,
license. When you change subject areas, you're adding an endorsement.
Yes.
You're not changing your basic license is a teacher license with different endorsements on it.
Yeah.
When you have a school nurse or a counselor or a psychologist, those are different licenses.
mhm.
So I guess I'm just curious if we need the whole change licenses, because if you go get a different license, that's your initial license.
So the idea I'm imagining, not saying we don't have to cut it, is the district not saying, well, we gave you induction when you were a teacher. Now that you're going to be a school counselor, we don't have to give you induction.
I see. Okay.
That would be my guess on the intentionality. Whether it's necessary or not, that's a different state, that's a different place, but that's I'm sure the intention of the wording.
That makes sense to me.
What Allison was saying, I need a clarification on that too. So I'm just wondering about that piece, if we need more information around endorsements and licenses. I don't know if that's important, but I read it the way Allison did.
Yeah, I mean, so with Mile, I said so I have a 712 teaching license, secondary teaching license with a social studies and an English endorsement. So those are two different things. The license is the license to teach, and then the endorsement is the area for which I'm qualified to teach in. When you get an elementary license, you get an elementary license and you're elementary, generalist, you're an elementary classroom teacher. That's that's your endorsement. Your license is an elementary, a K-6 license with an elementary education endorsement.
So would the state require, because like if it's a requirement for moving from an initial to a professional license, would you have to give a person who went from a teaching license to a counseling license induction?
If they have to if their license requires an initial to professional, they would need to go through an induction process to do that.
But that's
here's-
if you hire them as a counselor. So Allison, you have to be working as a counselor. So let's say you decide to move from teaching to counseling. You have to, you do your course of study, you get your initial license as a counselor. Somebody hires you in our district to be a counselor. Now you start an induction program, and we have to provide that to you in order to keep you employed as a counselor for us. But we wouldn't provide you an induction, and nor would the state support you doing induction while you're not working in that role. So we're going to have to do it because we've hired you to do that work.
Well, I guess it's just clarifying, because as it stands right here, it just says to change licenses, but I'm wondering if induction programs fulfill state requirements of moving from professional or initial to professional or something along that line.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
okay.
about to call you.
Okay, sorry.
Because I saw you raise your hand, but Allison was talking, so I was about to say,
No, it's
and
fine,
Kristen.
but in meetings past, I'll say something and no one hears me because they can't.
I can hear you this time.
So I feel like, so for example, when I stopped being a teacher and became an administrator, I had to go through induction with administration, even though I had gone through teacher induction long before. So I'm wondering, I feel like we're confusing the two in this entire paragraph. And I'm wondering if it should just say induction programs are for the purpose of moving from an initial to a professional license, period. And then you just know that if you've taken some other training, like I did with my type D, I know I have to get a new license. So I have to go through induction. So anytime you get a license, you go through induction.
I wonder
sense?
if we need to add the clarifier to just so that Mila, like the piece that Mila was just talking about, 100%, I cut that part we just talked about. But I wonder if we do need to add a component that says when you are hired for a position and you hold an initial license, something that is about when you are hired for that position. So we are not required, like, we don't find ourselves someone arguing with us that says, hey, I just got my type D, give me my induction, even though I haven't been hired for it. Or I got my counseling license, now give me induction so I can get my professional. Some sort of clarifier in there.
I think what Allison is starting to suggest might hit that.
Moving employees, or
I think it's from an initial to a professional. I think that's what it is. Yeah, anytime you have an initial. And to Dave's point, the state doesn't require or even allow you to do induction if you're not doing that job. So I think that reference to the state requirements might cover us for people who are like, I'd like to start inducting as an assistant principal. And I'm still a teacher, I know, but I'd like to start that. The state won't allow that. So maybe that covers it by referencing state requirements.
I think so. I think it's a less wordy way of saying what I was trying to say, but trying to capture that idea in there.
Yeah.
And I was going to mention, if we do need that language about a new license, it would be a license type, right? Because we have different types of licenses with CDE. So that would cover, the counselor, principal, educator, or teacher. So we could keep license type if we do need that extra role.
No. Yeah, no, it makes sense.
I think that's a good point, but I don't think we do.
Mila, for your, you wanted to delete that section. Since alternative license people do not go through induction, I do think we need to call out that we're not doing both for them. So they're doing induction or alternative licensure.
Actually,
when they're first hired, right? Am I missing something?
Timing, yeah. And the way that's phrased makes it look like if I'm in an alt license, I don't have to do induction, and that's not true. You do induction. It's just a matter of timing. And I don't know that we need to talk about that here. That'll be a universe. It's the way that programs are set up. You don't do induction during that year that you're doing your alt licensure work. That would be too much. So then you do it the year after. I don't know that we have to say that. That's kind of the way it's defined.
I think because they don't get an initial, they get a truly alternative license. And the way we've reworded the beginning of the paragraph, I don't know that we need to have it now. I think before we may have needed to, but now with the way we have it worded, I think we can just delete that section. Allison put a comment on one of them. The inductee has the opportunity to participate in the induction program while holding an initial license.
Yeah,
I agree. We don't need that because it's not an opportunity; it's a requirement.
Yeah,
you shall participate in this program.
Yeah, so let's just strike that sentence.
Yeah.
Allison got up, or I would have let her strike her own sentence. Okay. And this information, I feel like us quoting CDE rules, once again, is potentially problematic. It's informational, but it's not, maybe not be accurate. So
yeah, I think we strike that out. We made a lot of changes, so maybe everyone should just take a pause and read through the section again, just to make sure.
Yeah.
Hey, Mila, just a FYI, I have a hard stop at 4:30 when we were scheduled to end. So if we're not quite done, I may need to hop off.
Roddy's going to kick us off because they need the Zoom channel for the board meeting and they need to get set up. So if we're not done,
a hard stop too. So
okay, we're going to stop at
Kristen, I see your hand up.
I was just saying I do too.
Okay. I do appreciate everyone sneaking us into this time slot.
Yeah.
I also want to honor our our dedicated time.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll stop talking so people can read through it again.
Can I suggest moving, just swapping 0.3 and 0.4 here? Because we have the definition of the mentor, or more or less that mentor is part of the induction, and then the role of the mentor.
Sure.
Yeah.
We can do that. I'll do that right now. I'd also like to point out we went from 8 bullets down to 5.
It's a beautiful thing.
All right. So we do have 15 minutes left. If no one else has anything else in the induction one, I think we should take a stab at starting at least the shared decision making. We should probably start from the top, not the bottom. So if you want to scroll up to the top. I did not have, I heard people talk at the last IBS meeting that there should be a separate article. So I did not create a place for it nor give it a number. I figured we would either just place it at the end, or really it would probably replace, usually the term of the contract and that kind of stuff is usually the last one. So we probably sneak it somewhere near the end of the agreement. But so that's why it's all X, is because not because it's number 10, but because it has an unassigned number.
I have a question before we.
Yeah.
Is it typical within contracts to have value statements as to why we have these things?
We have it in different places. So I would say it's not unheard of, our agreement or agreements in general. And usually they're there if it serves a purpose to help frame what the intent of the language is for. Okay. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one is value laden, so.
The whole thing is value laden, so.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. So, okay.
I'm starting to see some people focusing in on cutting some stuff and adding some stuff. That's fine. As people are doing that, are there any questions about it as we're trying to, trying to get the right space, the right language?
I have a question. I don't know if we want to go way down there though.
It's all good.
On X.5 and at the end it's empowering others. What does that necessarily mean?
So I can tell you not whether or not it should be there, but it's the idea is that it's empowering others to be part of the solution, right? Like in part contributing to making the building a better place. So it's about empowering folks to be invested in their workplace and their school. That's the intent behind that phrase. Do I think it needs to be there?
Yeah. I was just curious if we could find another word.
So maybe like engaging. Did you like to move?
I think that's a pretty exhaustive list of group process skills, and I don't think it needs another item. I think it's about groups working together
collaboratively.
Yeah.
Done.
Sorry, that I was just curious about that.
It's all good.
That's the fresh eyes that say, what is that? How would we enforce that? Because you got to think about, like, if there's a grievance,
Right.
What is it that we're going to grieve, and how are we going to say that it did or didn't happen correctly? And
Allison commented about Fridays in September and October. We did just recently pick those dates. What was that, 2 years ago, for turning in and whatnot, the master agreement language. And we picked the last Friday in September to convene a meeting to review the plan and then have it submitted by the first Friday in October. The idea was that to give people, like, you have to convene by X date and submit by Y date. That was I think the intent behind having it split up like that. I think we just made those two changes relatively recently, Mila. Wasn't it like 2 years ago?
yeah,
I was actually thinking of it more in terms of we might change the start of the school year. And so we have been intentional about not picking like specific dates, given how things could change. Like, what if we do go to year-round schooling or something like that?
so we could say 4th week, 5th week, or if we want to kind of a
kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, so then it would be to be honest, I mean, even if we moved it up a couple of weeks, like 1 week, the school start at this point, we'd have to renegotiate because the contract language says the school year starts in August, right? Because that defines the school year as between August and June. And so if we were to go into July for our start date, we would have to renegotiate relook at several pieces of the agreement, not just that one. And my thought was, people thought that when we talked about this, that before that first week in September, between back to school nights, trainings at the beginning of the school year, there was no ERD time to be able to pull teams together really before the end of September. It was unrealistic to ask people to get together, regardless if we said it was like 8 weeks in or 10 weeks in or whatever. Like, I guess we could say 8 or 10 weeks, but then we might as well just pick a date at that point.
I'm fine with whatever. I was just a question I had.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question, right? But to understand the rationale.
We could do within the first, whatever it is, weeks or months.
Or we can just live with the fact that this will be language we have to change
Yeah,
if we
that's
make any
fine.
significant adaptation to the contract. And
Yep.
we try to avoid that, but we'll have to do it in some places.
Mila, and I think it's 12 or X2, you highlighted the word legitimately. Do you want to talk through that?
Yeah, I just, which legitimately engages administrators, teachers, support staff. I don't know about you all. I've been a principal looking out at a staff and going, are you legitimately engaged? Or are you ritually engaged? Or are you just demonstrating compliance? Which is it? I just suggest that we don't need a modifier. Let's just have which engages and just get rid of that.
I would say if you were my principal, you would say daily engaged in this space. You're not
Stop with the ritual engagement. Come on.
I just, I guess I'm wondering too, because I wasn't there, but like, I think it was an effort to more talk about like engaging the whole staff rather than like, I picked the 7 people on the staff that I think are going to agree with me, or that I can like,
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we could put in, if we wanted to keep to your point, right, we could say which engages all impacted parties and put a parens, administrators, so on and so on.
I like all impacted parties.
You're right, that's probably what the modifier was trying to get at.
Stakeholders, parties, what we're doing is
I usually use the word all impact. That's the phrase I use, is impacted parties or impacted stakeholders. Those are the two I most commonly use when I talk about shared decision making. I don't know that there's a specific, one.
okay. Oops.
Well, I have kind of a silly question about that. So I believe that every decision that we make impacts students one way or another, but we don't have students join us for shared decision making when we're deciding when we should collaborate after school or, various things. So I guess I'm just curious about that language, because I don't want it to kind of then make it something bigger than it always needs to be. If all the teachers are deciding when they're collaborating, do we need to have the students also vote on when their teachers should collaborate?
I think that goes to the impacted, right? Like a student's not impacted on whether we're doing collaboration at 3:15 or 4:45 or whatever it is. And so, that would be my answer to that, is that you're right. We shouldn't do, I would not want to have it say including these people at all times. I think that's why I like the clarifier impacted stakeholders, because classified might not be impacted. The English department may not be impacted. The whatever may not be impacted. And we can, people could quibble about the, hey, I'm impacted. And then we can, what's that?
Everything impacts students at the end of the day.
I agree with Mila. I feel like students are always impacted, but that's just my thinking.
Yeah, but that's taking it a step too far. It's like, to Dave's point, planning time. The fact that we plan impacts students. When we plan does not really.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And if you're gonna, let's say, change a grading scale, yeah, you should get some input from parents and from staff or from students and all kinds of stuff.
Okay, we're gonna have to wrap it up, guys.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
So
I wonder. Sorry, go ahead, Mila.
Should we schedule another meeting for this little group while it's fresh and while we're on a roll? And wrap this up. It might only need to be, you know, a half hour or 45 minutes, or maybe longer. I'll schedule an hour and we'll take the time we need, but does that sound okay?
Yeah, I would just also suggest looking and making comments on the rest of this article so that then we can just talk through people's questions or comments. So that way, you know, we've kind of you've captured your thinking and we can just kind of work through it one at a time. Will get us through it relatively quickly. But you guys did great work today. I really appreciate it. This is hard thinking. And we picked people who haven't been steeped in it as much as Mila and I have, because you guys brought some really great fresh eyes to the language. And so I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Dave, are we going to try to do this before next week's IBS meeting? I wonder if we could possibly squeeze this into like Tuesday or something. I'll look at your calendars, but.
Yeah, look at my calendar, see if we can. If not, we can also just present next week the ones that we have completed and just hold the shared decision-making one until later. I think that makes the most sense. And we're gonna spend so much time talking about the other ones that we wouldn't get to shared decision-making probably anyways, or vice versa. We do shared decision-making and not the other ones. Okay. So my suggestion is that if we can, great. If not, as long as people are making comments and whatnot on it, I think we've met that trying to capture our thinking space.
Yep.
I have to run out, but
yep, I do too.
Decide on something, send me a calendar invite. Yeah.
All right. Okay, sounds good, guys.
Bye, guys. See you all later. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Roddy. Did we have any viewers?